Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Record Live. Jared, last time we spoke, you were about to go away on a little holiday for like a triple celebration. I think all your loyal fans are probably dying to know how your mini vacation was. So,
it was great. It was great, Zanita. I had managed to get married on my birthday. So my wedding anniversary, my birthday are the same date. It's an awesome time we get to celebrate. So often I don't get presents as such, but I go away with my wife and we have a nice weekend if we can. This is our first sort of child-free trip for a while since we had our daughter in the pandemic. So yeah, it was really nice. We went to Coogee. We did some walks on the beach, ate a beautiful vegetarian vegan meal in a little cafe in Bondi, which I would recommend if anyone, is into that sort of thing. And yeah, we had a good time. It's nice to get some sunshine, as you would know, and get to the beach. Zanita, you're now living across from the beach, so we'll try to withhold our jealousy there. But it is nice to get out in nature from time to time and get some fresh air.
It is. It's awesome. Well, we're very jealous, but we're glad that you had a good time away and can be with us again. We have a special guest today. His name is Robbie Fatt, and he is a filmmaker, a cinematographer, and a director. He kind of wears a lot of different hats. So for anyone watching, this is kind of a creative conversation we're having. If you have any questions about that kind of stuff or about filmmaking, then feel free to just put them in the comments. And we're going to do something a little different today. We're actually going to start with a trailer. And this is the trailer for Robbie's first film called Everything I Am. So we might just kick that off, and then after that, we'll bring on Robbie.
Here's the story, here we are, falling forward.
Hey, what's your name?
Nathaniel.
What are you doing out here?
I've just got nowhere else to go.
All we know is what's been gone.
Emily, are you happy?
No.
Do you know why?
I don't know, I get caught up in all the little things, and I honestly don't know what to do with my life.
We try to tell a story.
So, what do you want to do, Nathaniel? What would you do if you could do anything?
I'd probably become a doctor or something. I don't know. Maybe in another life.
Why not in this life?
I didn't really have a choice about this life.
I just believe that there aren't many truly unselfish people out there. Like, sure, there's good in people, but just purely genuine, kind, selfless people are so rare.
I just can't seem to do anything that doesn't have any value to me, I guess. All I want to know is that I'm making a difference in the world. But I'm looking outside myself and helping others.
Yeah, we try to tell a story. We write.
Amazing. So good. That song has been in my head all day since uploading this video. But Robbie, welcome to Record Live. It's great to have you on today with us.
Thanks. It's great to be here. Yeah.
Before we get into things, I've sort of mentioned a little bit about like your job description, but can you just tell us like where you're from and maybe like what projects you're currently working on?
Yeah. So I'm from Sydney. I studied film at university and pretty much made a lot of different short films. I made actually 12 short films before I finally made this movie. So it was kind of my big aim to make a movie before I was 30. And so I achieved that. And this year I've just shot another short film and I have a few other projects coming up as well. But this is kind of the big one that took up a lot of my time over the last 2 years. It's a full-length feature. So yeah, it's been very flat out, very busy. And yeah, it's been fun.
Robbie, we hear about feature films, costing millions of dollars and having, when the credits roll, there's a staff of thousands sometimes, pulling this together. But I understand you did this with a fairly obviously a limited budget and even a fairly small team. Can you just tell us a bit about the logistics of getting this movie made? Because first of all, congratulations. It's a huge achievement to do something like this before you're 30. It's great, you know, but what did it sort of involve to get this project done?
Yeah, so like back in 2016, I shot this short film called The Towns We Lived In, and it was 28 minutes long, and we pretty much shot that with my friends and my family. So my parents, my brother acted in the film, and had a very small budget. And because it was 28 minutes long, when it was finished, I thought that's like only a third of like a total movie length. Like a 90-minute film is like only 3 times that much. So I was like, this is probably achievable. But in that time period, I was, trying to shoot another film, and it was going to cost, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I was trying to like raise money to get that happening, but I just couldn't get funding. You know how hard it is to get funding. So I had to rewrite another script. And so that's what this one was. So I wrote this script around budget. It's semi-based on a true story, and just kind of thought about what can I do with the resources I have. So it was the same type of situation: parents, friends, family, volunteers, and a few actors. And it was realistically a completely self-funded project. My parents helped me a little bit just to get it started, and it was small donations from some people. But yeah, it was, at the end of the day, self-funded. So a lot of stress. But yeah, it happened. We finished it, and yeah, I'm excited that it's finally done. So
good. Sometimes stress can be good, I guess. You mentioned this is your first full-length film, which is a pretty big deal and also a pretty big benchmark to hit by the time, like you said, you were 30. And I kind of think of it like when people ask me as a writer, like, are you ever going to write a book? I'm like, do you know how long that's going to take? Like, unless there's something that I'm desperately like wanting to get off my heart. And so my question kind of is like, what is the story behind this film? Like, why did you want to write it or tell it?
I guess like one of my main aims, like as a filmmaker, was to make Christian films for secular people. I always felt as if most Christian media content was directed at Christians. So it was worded in a way which is very Christian, and it was very directed in a, not a cheesy way, but in a way which maybe wasn't universal. So my main aim was, with this film and in films in general, was films which were universal. Anyone could watch if you're a secular person, and you wouldn't feel like you're being preached at. You wouldn't feel like you're kind of being overly religious. And I guess the aim for this film was to reshape secular perspectives on what it means to be a Christian. And for me, it was kind of based on, the Good Samaritan, Matthew 25, and when it talks about in James, what is true religion? And true religion is looking after the orphans and widows in our society. I feel like that's kind of what the film was about. And it was based on a true story to some extent, seeing one of my friends just take this homeless person into their house, and just being like, whoa, we don't do this. Like, why don't we do this? This is what it means to be Christian. In my mind, this is what Jesus did with his time. And that was kind of the main drive for me with this film. So, yeah.
That's interesting you mentioned, and I think people, even some Christians, have the perception that Christian movies are a bit corny, or they're not necessarily, as interesting as a big budget sort of Hollywood. They're not as accessible to non-Christians. How do you bring your faith for yourself, like your faith, into the storytelling and the creative space? Like, how do you navigate that, that desire to communicate well to external people, but also stay true to sort of the beliefs that you hold and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I guess in like full honesty, like I'm always on a journey myself spiritually. Like I think I'm a fairly deep thinking, skeptical person. So with this film, I put myself into all of the characters. I do have like a belief in God, and I really do want that stuff more than anything, but I also have doubts. I also have struggles that hold me back. So yeah, I guess for me, I'm really trying to be honest as much as I can in what I'm sharing. So as far as, my faith and stuff, yeah, like I'm open to talk about it anytime with any person. And yeah, I guess the things that I'm fully certain of, I'm passionate about, I want to share. And the things that I'm less certain of, maybe I won't make a film about because I'm not sure of, if that makes sense. So.
Yeah, I guess it's those doubts that the characters find themselves asking that probably makes it more like relatable for secular people watching anyway. Like, and you mentioned that you wrote this specifically for the secular audience rather than like Christians or whatever. How have you found it's been received, and how are you actually getting that onto their screens?
Yeah, I mean, that's the number one thing, like marketing. If no one watches your product, what's the point of making it? So we were really adamant from the start about having a strategy for distribution. Pretty much last year, we signed distribution with an American distributor called Bridgestone Multimedia Group. So they pretty much got that film onto Amazon and different platforms. But for us, like, there was an element of making, financial return back, but more than anything was getting people to watch it. So it's actually free to watch. So you can watch it on YouTube for free. Like right now, you could go and watch it. And we found that that's the quickest way. Yeah, so pretty interesting. So if you want to watch it, just type in Everything I Am on YouTube, and yeah, it's going to be up there. It's been up for about almost a month now. So yeah, it's got about 100,000 views. So it's getting some traction, but yeah, more than anything, it's a stepping stone film for me, because I know in the film industry, you start small and you've got to work your way up. So for me, it's a film hopefully that leads to the next project.
And I guess that leads to the next sort of question. What's next in terms of, it's free at the moment on YouTube, and that's good. It's good to get it out there, the message, and get yourself known, I suppose. Is there a plan to do more of this sort of thing in the future? Is this your dream?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Like my ultimate dream was always to make a Christian or Adventist film production company. Like, we were making movies every year. And it wasn't just me, it was a team of different people. They were creating their own projects with their own visions, because everyone has a different story to tell, and everyone has a different style of film. And I feel like my way of telling is very unique and different from a lot of other people. So yeah, that was my ultimate aim. And I think, in some sense, this was my stepping out in faith, or taking that risk to try and be like, hey guys, I'm going to invest, my own money, my own like savings into this project. Now, like, hopefully you'll support me with the next one. Hopefully we can move forward as a team now. So that's where I'm at. I have other projects, a few scripts in mind, and it's kind of, which script do I do based on how much money I have, but also based on what's worth telling, what's worth investing my time in.
We were talking a little bit before about how Christian films have a reputation for being cringy, which is like, it's a sad reality, like, obviously. And I think a lot of people, maybe over the last year or so, have seen how films or series like The Chosen has spread, and how secular people have really loved that as well as Christians. But do you have a hunch for why Christian films have the tendency to be so cringy, and what are you trying to do to make them more appealing?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the elements is a lot of them are American. And there's nothing wrong with American movies in general, but American culture creates an idea of Christianity, whereas I feel like the authentic voices from other cultures that tell Christianity do make it more unique. But more than that, I think, as an Adventist too, our message is different. It is unique, and it is more holistic. So, yeah, I think life isn't always as black and white as, Christian films like to be, everyone's happily ever after kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, for me, I think the best stories you can tell are true stories. Like when I watched Hacksaw Ridge, I was like, this is a great movie. Like, regardless of whether you're Christian, people loved that movie because it was true, and you couldn't argue with the faith because that's what it was. And I think if you tell a true story, people can be like, I don't like that, but realistically, it's what happened. So I think true stories are maybe more powerful, and I don't see many, if any, Christian films doing many of them, like at least in American industry. I guess there's a few, but yeah.
Have you what sort of response have you been getting from people? Have you got any comments you can share with us, or stories about someone who's watched the film that's moved, or even, I guess you're in an independent sort of indie space making this, guerrilla movie making with your team and your friends and your family. Are there any awards in that space? Can you enter
Yeah.
the film into, or to see it get some traction that way? What's been the response to the movie?
For sure. I mean, we entered the film into about 14 film festivals. It got into 9 of them, including the International Christian Film Festival, which is the biggest Christian film festival in the world. So that got nominated for Best Actress, Best Actor. So yeah, I mean, there was a lot of positive feedback. Obviously, when you're shooting a film with the budget we had, with the resources we had, there's a lot of things that you look back on like, man, I wish I could have changed that. In the script, there's a lot of things like, man, I wish I had not written that in. But at the end of the day, like, feedback's been positive. I did a screening in Melbourne actually on the weekend, and yeah, I'm always surprised when people come up and they say, "Oh, I love the film," because I'm like, "Oh man, I can't believe you actually liked it." Like, I know so many things that went wrong in the process, so it's just rewarding to know that it connects with people and they understand the message. And challenges people also in their Christian walks. I always hear that people are like, "Oh man, I feel challenged by that," and it doesn't just leave you and you feel like that was nice, let's go home. It's kind of like, wow, that was challenging. Let me think about how I can apply that to my real life. So, yeah.
It sounds like a bit of like that idea where we're always looking at like, well, we could have done better, and is this good enough? It's like the classic artist perfectionist mindset, I suppose. And usually a lot of artists or a lot of creatives, they don't actually put stuff out there because of those like, it's never good enough kind of thoughts. But you've put a lot out there. So do you actually like struggle with that perfectionist idea, or how do you deal with that or navigate that if you do?
Yeah, that's so true. I am a pretty big perfectionist, but I just feel like each project is a learning process. And film is such a unique art form because it's not like music or painting or something where you can just be by yourself in a room and just do it. Yet it's a collaborative effort of multiple parties. And when you look at if a film is good or bad, a lot of the time it's in each area, like in the script writing, or it's in the acting, or it's in the cinematography, or it's in the editing, or it's in the music, or it's in the... So there's so many elements to what makes it good. So when I'm balancing all those hats myself, obviously, there's going to be some areas which are, not as good. And I understand that. And, my ultimate aim is to work with a team of talented people who I'm delegating, their work to. They're going to be way better at me at their roles anyway. So, but unfortunately, to get to that level, it's all a money game. Unless you know people that are willing to do it for free. Trust me, I've called them. Nick Lindsay, hey, how you going? Carl Vincent, Daniel Kubera, come out. So trust me, I've called them all. I try my best to get anyone involved, but yeah, it's so collaborative. It's complicated, yeah.
Mm-hmm. The church has an interesting relationship with creativity sometimes. It's important. I believe it's important for the Christian church to, I guess, use more creative outlets to reach people. But tell us a little bit about your philosophy on that side of things. Like, why do you think it's important to, the episode title that we put on this episode is Creating Purposefully. Why should Christians create? What benefits do you see that it has for the church, for people like yourself and others to be creative and use their gifts and talents in a really, even in a secular spaces, movie making and stuff? Sometimes churches have let's say a difficult relationship with creative feats. You mentioned, true stories, but fiction has always been a bit of a questionable, or adaptations of true stories. How can we engage that better as the Christian church? And what do you see as being important in that space?
Yeah, there's so many layers to that question. Hey, I think I'll avoid the creativity answer a little bit, and talk about film in general, because the reason why I am passionate about movies is because Christians don't do it enough. And when I look at what my friends do at home, when they go home, they watch Netflix, they watch Amazon, they watch Disney, rarely do they engage in Christian media content, if that makes sense. So I feel like if we're like Paul, we should go to the platforms that people are at. We need to go to the spaces where people are at. And when people spend their time on Netflix, I feel like that's important. We need to take note of that. And we become all people, all things to all men, you know, that idea. When it comes to creativity within Adventism, there's so many layers to it. Obviously, one of the biggest layers is, you know, the conservative mindset theologically, in the sense of what is appropriate for entertainment. Obviously, film in general was something which people didn't go to when they were young. Like my mum doesn't go to the movies. I wasn't allowed to go to the movies. So that was a traditional thinking. Not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that's the way it is. So to even create a movie, well, that's a whole other conversation. So yeah, I mean, it's complicated. You know, there are a lot of areas where people are super supportive of creatives. But, you know, as far as in all the creative fields, if you think of one famous Adventist in a creative field, you're really reaching. Like in the music fields, you know, we're not the leaders, we're not Hillsong, we're not Bethel. No one listens to our music. You know what I mean? In the film industry, we made one movie, Tell the World. We didn't make Hacksaw Ridge. We probably could have, maybe. So if you look at it like that, maybe we don't invest our money into it because we don't see value in it, but also maybe there's a lot of risk involved, and there are so many procedures to make a project happen. It's not one person with a vision and making it work. It's a collaboration of people at a table saying, is this going to fit our, you know, strategy for the year, or, you know what I mean? So it's more complicated than that. And it's not always good or bad. It's just the realities of how a church runs. And I hope I'm not being too controversial in things I'm saying right now, but I'm explaining, you know, obviously let me know what you think about it, but that's just kind of my thoughts.
No, I think it was a very measured answer and balanced. I guess for myself, it's a question I wrestle with as a writer and as a creative anyway. But I think God is a creator, and he created us in his image. And so if we're called or we have talents or gifts in a creative area, we should be faithful and use those gifts, because then we're just reflecting how God made us to be. We're made to create, whatever that looks like. And I think we have had as you say, we've had an interesting relationship with creative pursuits traditionally, and the conservative side of the church. But I don't know if we've wrestled with it enough to the point where I really liked what you said about not being present. You know, if we're not present, how can the gospel go to every tongue and nation and kindred and people if we're not in the space? So what you're saying is you're in a movie making space because you've identified that there's no Adventists making movies right now, and that's a space that we can fill with a mission mindset. I think I really liked that sort of angle that you addressed.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I read statistics just like yesterday that our screen time is like 6 hours and 58 minutes or something insane, which is probably like mostly like violence and sex and drama and like, you know, all of that kind of stuff that is like not necessarily good, but that draws us in. And so there is such an opportunity for like Christians or Adventists or whoever to come into that scene, but it's not something that we often see. But do you ever feel like how do you feel working in space? Do you feel like it's easy to just be like the holy light on a hill, or do you find that challenging, kind of being in a space where you're creating something so different to what everyone else is creating?
Sorry, just repeat that. I think I just missed the last section. Sorry, I didn't hear what you said. Yeah.
I'm getting a bit of interference from Zanita, like a bit of breakup. But I think what she said was, how do you go with being the light on the hill, like in that space? Like, are you comfortable? Is that an easy role to fill, or do you wrestle with that? Correct me if I'm misparaphrasing you, Zanita, but
to be honest, like I feel like I want to like inspire other people to do stuff. You know, it's not about me and my success realistically. It's about like I love movies. Like I always wanted to make films. Like I think film, like for me, it could bring you to tears. It can inspire you. It can tell a story so powerful and that's so real. And so, those my passion for film, not just because I wanted to make movies, I genuinely love movies. I genuinely love the art form. I love cinematography. I want to inspire other people to do that. So whether I'm, the lad on the hill, I don't think so. I mean, there's plenty of other people making films. I guess I'm just someone who makes more narrative style stuff. So yeah, I hope that, by making this film, one of the aims of it was to be like, guys, it's doable. Let's do it again, and let's do it better, and let's work together as a team, and let's start something new and amazing that's never been done in Adventism, and that's like a film company. Let's do it. Let's tell our stories. We've got so many great ones to tell. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
I'm not sure if I pulled it across from Zanita quite. She was breaking up a bit for me as well, but I think you answered the question. In terms of that next stage, without giving too much away, I suppose, do you have any other? What kind of stories would you like to see told in the church? What kind of stories do you think? And maybe they're not even projects that you're planning to work on, but maybe someone's watching this who is starting to catch the vision that you're talking about at some point, even in the future. They've watched this, they've found this, and they're like, actually, I've got a story I'd like to tell, or I'd like to make movies or start somewhere. What are some of the stories that you think it's important for, and especially the Adventist church? You've reflected on how we have, I guess, unique stories to tell. Do you have any direction you'd like to see those stories take?
Yeah, 100%. Like, I mean, I have a list of like film ideas, and my ultimate aim is a Daniel movie, realistically. When I think about what made our church like convert people successfully for the last 150 years, it wasn't our amazing music, it wasn't our friendly churches, as much as the prophetic message from, which started our church. So for me, a movie on Daniel 2 would be my ultimate aim. So that's like at the end of my career, once I've actually got the budget and the resources to do it properly. But yeah, I mean, there's heaps of stories. My next film I'd love to do is on Dennis Perry, who does Operation Food for Life, and Lee Boy and their story. And that crazy, the stories that happen on that dump in Papua New Guinea are just insane. And, I'm in the process of hopefully making that one happen. But if that doesn't happen, I have another script on suicide and something completely different. I have a Netflix 10-part series I'd love to do, which is on depression and Neil Nedley's depression recovery program. So there's so many different ideas. I also have non-Christian ideas too, which I've been struggling with. Should I invest my time and resources to do this when there's no real eternal point in it other than just because I want to? So yeah, I'm at that point now where I'm not sure what I'm going to do. But I'm kind of open to whatever comes next, I suppose, with opportunity. And I guess if God leads something into my life, that can happen. Yeah.
We'll see if my connection will work this time. But on your website bio, you said that you love storytelling and you love creating stories that are challenging and inspiring people. What do you mean when you say that? Like, what are you challenging and inspiring people to do?
Yeah, I think when Jesus told his parables, like they really did struck people to the bone of like, some real thing that they were going through or some real issue that they needed to change in their life. And I feel like that's somewhat our calling. And it's not to be like pointing fingers or anything. It's more to be like, guys, there's a better way to live. And Jesus has those answers. And I think, when the gospel really transforms your life, at least when I see it work in people's lives, people change. And it's really inspirational. It brings them to tears. It makes them feel so much peace and like excitement. And I think if you're in the church for a while, you can lose that. And sometimes you just need those moments of igniting or re-inspiring. And that rebaptism, when Paul says, I die daily, maybe it's getting back to that love for Jesus daily, so that we want to do more with our lives. And for me, the core message of this film was loving others, thinking about others continuously as a part of our identity, as what it means to be Christian. Because when Jesus lived his life, that's what he did with his time. And so for me, when it was practically applied, in the real world scenario at church every week, do you say hello to the new person, or do you just hang out with your friends? Do you text, people you haven't seen for a while, invite them to dinner? Do you put in time for people that are the least of these in society, or do you just hang out with people you think are cool enough for you? And I feel like those are, for me, like the things I observe in a lot of our local churches is people isolating. They only want to hang out with people they think are cool enough for them. Like it's like some high school or something. So yeah, for me, that was this message, Rachel's character was so intentional about people, regardless of who they were. And I feel like that's Jesus's message. And I feel like that's common sense. That's like basic Christianity, but for some weird reason, it's not always practiced in our Adventist churches from my experience.
Speaking of your experience, in terms of making this movie, what's something that you learnt in terms of a faith lesson? Like, how was your faith tested or grown or challenged in the process of making a feature film?
Yeah, I mean, I guess when you talk about like answers to prayer, like I didn't realize the logistics. Like if you're talking practically, it was 25 shoot days. So that's a lot of time to be not working and to be funding a project. And in the film industry, if you're shooting outside, it could rain. Like it could something could go wrong. It could be windy. And we only had to reshoot one day, and it was the very last day. So something happened there. Like it may have rained, but not when we were filming. Like, you know what I mean? Like we got all the shots we needed. Like we completed what we needed to do. I feel like that's a miracle in itself. And to be honest, every day you'd end the day and you'd feel shattered. You'd feel discouraged. Like, man, that was so hard. I have to do it again tomorrow. I've just got to suck it up and do it again. And by the end of it, like, we're like, wow, we're still here. Like, we're still going. And like, when it finished, it was like, wow, we did it. Like, maybe we only did it because God was like helping us with this somehow. So yeah, I just can't believe it finished. Like we went into making a feature thinking, oh, we'll just make a movie. And like the actual process was, man, it was crazy hours, crazy, like, just a lot of stress and a lot of financial pressure, to be honest. So yeah.
You've mentioned the struggles, and I'm guessing that's because you also wear so many different hats when it comes to your roles. Is there a specific area that you want to like niche in, or that you want to specify in?
Yeah, I mean, I did cinematography a lot. So, but I do like directing more than anything. I like working with the actors, but the art of filming is, it's something so irresistible. So yeah, cinematography is definitely something that I guess I would say I specialize in. But I would love to have someone else take that role, who's more talented than me, that has their own like voice, with imagery. And, I'm excited to work with other DPs. But a lot of the time I call them and they're like, oh, sorry, man, not available. Like, oh, you're not paying me? Oh. So what can you do? Like, yeah.
Well, hopefully you'll find some funding. I know, crowdsourcing and Kickstarter is a big thing these days. So yeah, I guess getting your movie out there and getting some runs on the board, to use a cricketing term, is possibly a good start to get people to believe in your products and your films and stuff. When we have these conversations on Record Live, we're often taking them to a place where we get a bit practical. We like our viewers to sort of think about something they can do perhaps in their own lives to deepen their faith, or to reach out in some way, or to do something. Would you have any, either lessons from this movie, or from your own experience, or a call even to other creatives that you'd like to, use this platform to share and don't be afraid to get a bit practical. I suppose we're calling our people to do something, to be the change that they need to be in the world. So yeah, what would you say to someone who's watching this?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think my film is pretty practical, and I can just reiterate things I've said before, but it's something that I'm very passionate about, and that's just in your local church, who do you look out for? Like, do you really look out for the new person? Like, ever? Do you ever like talk to someone that's new? Do you ever actually reach out? And if not, why? Like, we value things like the Sabbath really highly. We value things like not eating pork really highly, but we don't seem to really care if the new person isn't talked to as much. Whereas I feel like that is as important. When Jesus talks in Matthew 25, he says, when his disciples say, "When were you hungry and you fed me? When was I clothless and you clothed me?" Jesus says, anything you did to the least of these, you did to me. Depart from me. It's almost like a salvational issue to some extent. Like, if you're a truly converted person, it's just what you will do. Like, it's just what it means to be a Christian in my perspective. So practically, message someone. Obviously not everyone's an extrovert, and talking to a new person can be daunting, but find a way that you can reach out in some way. Like, I'm really passionate about the youth leading the church. I'm really passionate about our churches in Australia shrinking. I'm really passionate about that. And when I see other churches that thrive, it's always got to do with, the friendliness of the church. It's not got to do with the theological issues. They're very small in comparison to just people have a community there. They know they're going to be talked to. So I guess those are my kind of thoughts, and they might be a little bit controversial, but that's kind of what I believe, and that's what I've seen from my experience traveling around the world for the last 5 years or whatever. So yeah.
A little bit of controversy is good here and there, so it's fine. That's all we've got today, Robbie. We're kind of hitting our time mark, but thank you so much for joining us. Just before we end, where can people find your films and what you're doing?
Yeah, so definitely just go on YouTube, search Everything I Am movie. It should be like the first link. It's like 86 minutes long. You can watch it for free. If you want to watch my other films as well, a lot of them on YouTube. Watch The Towns We Lived In. That one's on Youth Leading the Church. If you want to support, future projects, just send a message, really. If you want to help me with this film, leave a rating or a review on IMDb. That'll be super helpful. And share it with your friends. And yeah, I'd love to make another film. So if you know anyone who's got a lot of money or has resources, that'd be amazing.
Yeah,
Sweet.
another practical.
We're glad you're in the film space. It's good to have someone there.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Robbie. Really appreciate you joining us today. And yeah, be practical. Go leave Robbie a review on IMDb. That's a great idea if you watch and enjoy his film. He's acknowledged that he doesn't think it's perfect, but I'm sure there's good things, in the story, and it's an important message. I think it's a super important message to love one another, as you've really well articulated, Robbie. So yeah, we can all do that. We can all share the film, and it's good to get Christian messages out there that hopefully are created for secular audiences. So I think that's a really admirable aim that you've got. And yeah, we're very happy to have you on Record Live today. Next week, Zanita, might be our last one for the year, I think, or it's the last one we've got listed. So don't miss it. But we'll catch you then next week, 4 p.m. Wednesday.
Awesome. All right. See you next week, everyone. Thank you again, Robbie.
No worries. Thank you.